2, 1. Full course yellow is deployed. Full course yellow is deployed.
Yes, bonjour everybody. Welcome to Olympic City, Paris, where everybody's in Paris for the Olympics. So why the hell not? I'm as much in Paris right now as half of the Channel 9 commentary crew is. So bonjour and comment ça va and all the rest of it. So welcome to you all. But we're not talking about the Olympics tonight because the Olympics at this stage don't have motor racing. The FIA have tried on occasions to get it on. We might, if we get time, we might chat about that. But a fast show is a good show. We're going to have a quick one tonight. We're going to talk about all the news on the weekend, particularly, of course, ex Oakley Go Kart Club member Oscar Piastri. Congratulations to Oscar, who's joined the ranks of Australians who have won a Formula One Grand Prix. It's not a long list, but it's a very prestigious one. So congratulations to Oscar, and obviously we'll be talking about that and all of the drama that went on at what was a fairly ill-tempered Hungarian Grand Prix. There must have been something in the schnitzel or something over the weekend, because there was certainly sort of plenty of schnitz on the liver, that's for sure. Okay, to join us this week, we've got a couple missing tonight. Happy birthday to Dave Stillwell, first of all, because he's not joining us. It's his birthday today, so happy birthday, Dave. Also, our mate Mark Jones isn't feeling too bright as well, so he's not joining us from Queensland tonight. But the people who are joining us tonight are Doc and Pete from it's like a regular Tuesday night edition of In Pit Lane with just the three of us. G'day, guys. How are you?
Yeah, very good, Brett. Yourself? Good evening, Pete.
Good.
Well, what a weekend.
Sorry.
What a week. You go ahead, Pete.
No, I cleared my throat.
Well, yes, because there's going to be a lot
Tuesday night there as usual.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot to talk about. G'day, Phil. Hope you're feeling better after your recent health issues and all the rest of it.
Phil's before you jump across the whole thing, we'll stop right there. Phil's been quite vocal on his comments lately on some of the in pit lane stuff. A little bit more vocal than usual. He's always been a huge supporter, but good to hear from you, Phil. You've added some great value to some great opinions to some of the pieces Brett's been putting up for in pit lane, and we welcome all those contributions.
Phil, of course, one of our local photographers, and we'll probably, if he's feeling up to it, we'll probably be at Sandown in a couple of weeks' time. Might even be, I don't know if he might be up at Winton coming up. The Winton Festival of Speed is coming up, not this weekend, the weekend after. Then we've got Sandown. We've also on the same weekend at Sandown, unfortunately, we've got the GT and the production cars down at Phillip Island. So I'm not sure which one. Probably end up being down there. The GT cars, unfortunately, Mark not here tonight, but the GT cars, the GT World Challenge Australia up in Queensland this weekend, and great to see brand new Aston Martin just arrived in Australia today, and that's being prepared and will be put straight onto the transporter and heading up to Queensland for this weekend's round of the GT World Challenge. It's come straight out of the IMSA competition, the North American Sports Car competition. Hello. Up at the Festival of Speed, the Winton 300 coming up too. They've got a huge field for that again. That's very big, and also Vic State at Sandown, the hot dog round, a bit later in the year from normal, where incidentally the national sports sedans and Formula Ford will be in action as well. So a couple of national classes as well. And normally we don't see the sports sedans at all racing at the hot dog round because the Sports Sedan Association run the meeting and everybody's too busy running the meeting to actually go racing. But the national competitors will be there, so we will get some sports sedan racing and some of the top cars. And we saw them in action on the weekend in Sydney as well. Not the closest range, but some really great cars. I'm hoping that we'll see a few of those New South Wales cars down. People like Terry Shields, and then that crazy little Fiat with the turbocharged rotary. Also, the winner of the Deswall Trophy, Peter Ingram, in that gorgeous RX-7, lovely looking car. Hopefully that'll be down as well. So hopefully be able to get out there at least one of those days and perhaps do some stories for the upcoming new series of In Pit Lane, which starts August 27th, live on the YouTube channel. We're going to sort of change things around. We've been doing sort of the live streams on Facebook and then sort of deleting them and then putting up sort of the edited version up on the YouTube channel. But we're going to sort of drop the Facebook. Facebook's becoming really difficult to run.
Take a breath, Brett. Hello, Mag Cal, the Ever-Vested Mag Cal. Thanks for joining us as well too, which we don't want to skip because you did put him up. So good evening, Mag Cal. And I think just to round up what you just said, Brett, it seems that all the local events are starting to break cover from their winter hibernation, and just like we will be late August, as you said, with maybe a slightly revamped evening as well. And a big hello to Triple B. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yes, good to see you. And Jimmy, good day to you as well. Thank you for joining us once again. Okay, let's talk about the British Grand Prix. The Hungarian Grand Prix over the weekend. And as we said at the start of the program, a win to Oscar Piastri, but not without some controversy. Pete, well, let's take it from your standpoint. First of all, what's your take on it? I mean, like the situation was Oscar was coming out of second position off the grid. He made a great start. Lando made a terrible start. Oscar was faster than him. Max was faster than him. And under normal circumstances, they would have, of course, pitted Oscar first, but they decided to try and cover off Max and Lewis for Lando. And as a result, Lando got the undercut on Oscar, and they sort of said at the time, don't worry, we'll work it out later. And looked for a while there that our boy Lando wasn't going to play ball.
Yeah, I'm in two minds. First of all, I don't like that where team orders come into play. I remember it in Melbourne feeling a bit ripped off that when Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard on the last lap or the second last lap pulled over and because of a deal. But in the second stint, I could see Lando's point that he tell him to catch me then, and then when they said he can't, and the gap was growing and growing. So, and I kind of feel like it was, bad luck that they chose to do that, and Oscar couldn't catch him. I know that's very unpatriotic of me. So I kind of feel like it was, yes, he did in the beginning. He did deserve to win it, but I kind of feel like it was, circumstances and bad luck that he wasn't able to catch him. So I could sort of see Lando's point.
Yeah, I think the problem was, I think that, like Oscar's argument with that was also that, he wasn't catching him because he was running to try and, save his tyres. He was running to the delta that the team had set him. And the deal was that he just felt that, I don't have to push all that. I don't have to go crazy. I don't have to put it for risk. I'm just, because at some stage, because he got shafted. Oscar got shafted in the British Grand Prix because they refused to do the double stacking, so he lost out on positions there. And I think, at the time probably, and let's not forget that Oscar, once he got in front at the start, was pulling away. He was pulling away from Lando. He was well in front of Lando, and under normal circumstances, he would have just automatically got that undercut. But they tried to be a bit clever. Yeah. And as a result, they sort of, they tripped themselves up a little bit, because you can imagine the outcry that, if they had have shafted him again and said, and I could see the point, say, okay, Lando's closer to Max in the championship, but I think the team, even the team themselves, have even pretty much acknowledged now that, it's too big a gap. If as long as Max keeps, finishing in the first three or four. He's got it won already, and as far as they're not going to catch him.
And I think, like they pointed out that Oscar's taking it all in and hasn't sunk in yet. But I think it's more he's very reserved. He's very like Alan Prost, as I've said, and also I think he would he would rather. Yes, sure, it's great to get that first win, and it's in the history books of that his first win, but he would rather win it in a more emphatic way, I think.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with Oscar. I mean, he's so laid back. I mean, I heard that from a criticism from a few people who were just, like, he obviously didn't feel he deserved it. He was almost embarrassed to win. But if you look back at his history in Formula 2 and Formula 3 when he's won before, he's not that sort of person who goes like, oh my God, I'm so, oh my God. It's like, no, he's got a job to do, and my job is to win races. And it was like, thanks, appreciate it. And he was very happy about it. But
he's paid his penance, hasn't he? So look, he has supported the team environment and done everything they've asked him in all the races this year. He also, through his first year, his rookie year, as I said, and this is I'm only just echoing a lot of all the different opinions and throwing them all together. He's also done everything in his development last year they asked him to do, plus a little bit more. And he's showed that. And I think, as you've both mentioned, you two guys, in retrospect as well, too, from different races this year, he has worked hard for what he's got and achieved. And unfortunately, the circumstances he won the Grand Prix could have been better. But however, as you said, as both mentioned as well, too, and everyone said the same thing, the team McLaren were playing strategy. They were trying to cover off Jack, Jane, Perry, Bill, all that sort of stuff. And ultimately, in the end, they had to give it back to Oscar because he had showed, like that first stint you said, he absolutely outshone him. I don't think Lando got that bad a start. I'd probably disagree with you a little bit on that one. It's just that the other two guys got exceptionally good starts from they were, because as the if you're watching the race, Oscar's reaction time was better than Lando on this particular occasion. So therefore, those couple of milliseconds make a hell of a difference in a car that's going to go like a bullet. So
well, when you look at it as that, they went into turn one. I mean, Lando was basically, I mean, there wasn't much in it with Max. No. But I mean, and Lando had a decision to make. I mean, because Oscar wasn't going to, Oscar was being pretty forceful. I thought it was a great move by Oscar. The fact that he went, no, I'm here. I'm not.
My reaction time was out of the gun. His reaction time was the best, and he was always going to get that spot based on his start. And so the thing is, so any other strategy or any other outcome they did, which actually giving Lando, as like you guys just said, there would have been outcry. So by giving Oscar back the victory, which he worked for right from the start, they had to follow their use to giving that person, making the best possible opportunities to win that Grand Prix. It should have been Oscar's anyway. So they actually just reset the outcome where it should have been. Except for one quick thing I will say though, is the radio calls, which everyone's been talking about, and the after in paddock interviews were arguably more entertaining than the race itself. But anyway,
the radio calls were magic. But I mean, as Stuart's pointing out, the radio calls were ridiculous. They were entertaining. There's no doubt about that, and not just between Lando and the team, but also between Max and his team as well.
That's what my lower third is tonight. Absolutely amazing. I think he's just dropped about 10, 15 years in age with his radio calls. It's just absolutely hilarious.
Some of Lando's calls were ridiculous because they were telling him his tyres were going off, and only the driver would know. The driver would know if his tyres are going off, as well as
that was clearly the code, but it was also the fact that they were working to a delta, and that was sort of Oscar's argument later, as he said, we had to make those tyres last, and we were given a time that and in order to make those tyres last, if we don't push it too hard, we need to keep sort of within this range, and the tyres will see us through safely to the end. And I think that they were trying to use that as leverage. The one that got me, and that I think that was really unnecessary, and sort of in pro wrestling terms was breaking kayfabe, was when they said basically, Lando, if you're going to if you're going to go on and have success here, you need the team and you need your teammate. And it was almost this threat of, if you don't do as you're told, don't expect any favours later in the year when you might need
it'll
some.
cause that much disharmony within the team. They'll never. Lando won't get any victories. Oscar won't get anywhere near a podium or a victory again, and they'll all get taken out to the bloody back room there and read the riot act, and that's fair enough too. So they've got.
I don't know whether you saw it. I imagine Pete saw it. Peter Windsor. Did you have a look at?
No, I can imagine what I did see your post, but I can imagine what I want to go there. I can imagine what he's.
It was Johnny Bairstow all over again. It was the spirit of the thing that got me. It was just the attitude of him, the arrogance in terms of him sort of saying that he made no qualm about the point that as far as he's concerned, Lando is the number one driver. Oscar, your role is to support Lando. That's basically why you're a very good driver, but Lando is number one, and you should be a dutiful number two, just like Rubens Barrichello was. Just like this is the way it works, and. It was. It's always going to have an asterisk. This win is always going to have an asterisk over it because Lando was the moral victor. So he really carried on about it. And a lot of the British media have, as you can expect, have gone
narrow-minded, blinkers on, you name it. There's two other things we've touched on. One of them, but we've also probably need to talk about Max's whole race and his press conference afterwards. Plus, you could go for hours on his radio calls, which is hilarious with GD. However, it was his press conference at the end where he was making reference to the team mistakes very vehemently. And lastly, also the Daniel Ricciardo, where the team have blatantly said, we stuffed up.
Well, that was the interesting one. I watched. I've heard a few comments from sort of other podcasts and all the rest of it from people, and a lot of very experienced Formula One journalists are basically saying we've never, after the race, we've never seen Daniel that angry. I mean, Daniel, no matter what happens, Daniel always sort of at least tries to put on a smile and put on the best. Make the best of a bad lot, of a bad situation. It's always, there's always next time. But they said they have never seen him so angry. And there's no reason, you can see the reason why. I mean, he wasn't, when all of those cars that started on soft, raced into to pit, he had no need at all to do that. He wasn't in a race with them. He didn't need the car. They said, we had to cover the cars that came in early. He wasn't in a race with them. They were, coming in off soft, they were going to have to make another pit stop later anyway. If he'd have been on the same tyre, if he'd have been on softs as well, they should have brought him in, but he wasn't. Well, he could have gone on for plenty of.
What about the one stopper like Yuki, and he would have been in better points position than Yuki as well too. So.
So they really stuffed that up. So that was their problem. But Max, the other feature of the Max situation was the David Croft, good boys and girls.
He's been up all night.
He's been up all night. He's a poor boy. He's been up all night. Should have gone to bed early. Naughty
playing
boy. Those stupid video games.
3 hours of sim racing and part of the team.
3 o'clock in the morning. It's not good enough.
I just really think he just sounded like a complete brat on the radio, and showed a lack of maturity. It was extremely immature about the whole. Especially the comment when he made that I am trying to make the best of the situation. When you're the ones that put me on this strategy, and I'm the one that has to get the best out of it. So it's all it's all your bloody fault. However, I think I hate to bring it up because I do have a lot to do with football, as Brett knows, and I don't usually bang on about it, but I won't now. But if you're an umpire out there, and I've played a hell of a lot more than I've umpired, and I do both of these. An umpire makes mistakes, and you get the whole world's against you, and you can't make one. And even if it's behind something that you can't actually see and judge well. Whereas a player makes 2 or 3 mistakes, it's bad luck, mate. Keep going, you'll get the next kick right, or you missed that handball or something like that. You make a mistake. Max went so hot to that corner. and he got pulled in front of the stewards afterwards anyway. I don't know what the result
Got
was.
no action.
No action.
action
Okay.
was
But
taken.
he still probably got red. He still got they probably got the Bible out and probably told him where it not. But anyway, so they called him in for a reason, but he was the one that caused that anyway. And actually, I'm defending Lewis for a change. Lewis is a very big instigator himself, but in this particular occasion, Lewis straight away within a split second of Max basically going over the top of him. Max caused a whole lot of that. He come in so hot. I saw him coming a mile away, and Max said, "I didn't do anything wrong."
The problem was that it's a problem with that track. It's just so damn hard to pass, and obviously Max was clearly of the opinion that if I can just get past this bloke, I can chase off, and I might just have an outside chance of at least putting some pressure on Lando at least, and making a race of it for second, but he just couldn't get past the DRS. The straights just aren't long enough for the DRS to have any huge influence when you've got two cars that are very even in a straight line. That's why he'll catch up, but there's just not enough room to pass. And Max just got frustrated and he just tried to dive down under. Lewis did nothing wrong. Max locked up beforehand and just went straight on. It was just one of those things. So Max made the mistake. I think it was a twisted drift. The British media saying Lando was a team player. We're nearly begging him to let Oscar. Yeah, they've sort of said, this was another thing of Peter Wins. Like Lando, he showed that he put his own ego and his own for the good of the team and for the good of it. And because it was almost he almost felt sorry for Oscar. To let him. He slowed down. He let him pass because he knew it was team orders and he knew things were going to get difficult for him.
And in other circumstances, if they had a change of strategy right from the start, he wouldn't have been in that position, and it would have been Oscar up the front anyway, just miles ahead. So
it would have been different. If they'd have done what they did, and as Roy said before, McLaren, in hindsight, probably didn't need to do the switch around. They probably need, if they had enough pace and enough distance to bring Oscar in first and then to bring Lando in. And Lando, the McLarens were clearly the fastest cars on the weekend, so they would have. You would assume that Lando would have been able to hold off that challenge from both Lewis and Max. So they didn't show that much faith in either their car or their driver to stay in front. But they also, the situation was, if they'd have done that, and then, as has happened later in the race, if Lando had, come out behind Oscar and eventually sort of closed the gap and got driven faster in the second half of the race and got up right behind him, then I have no problem at all with them saying quite rightly, Oscar, Lando is faster than you. He's got Max and Lewis on his tail. Please move out of the way. I got no problem with that. If Lando's under pressure, then he could have moved. He could have moved out of the way, and then it was Oscar's move to try and hold off Lewis and Max.
Please comment if anyone else is watching in as well, though, too. But did you guys see Fred Vassar's post-race interview for the Ferraris?
No.
Brett, you didn't
think so.
He is a character. We always know he has since they've put him back in the limelight as basically the CEO or the front man for Ferrari. But because I think the press, I think the Formula One world's being very generous on the Ferrari brand itself, not on Fred himself, but I'm sure he's feeling the pressure sideways because he's been there for a little while now. But they're definitely underperforming from the start of the year and also what was projected from the start. They're supposed to be building at the moment, getting better, and it seems obviously that Mercedes have made a little step in the last couple of races, and McLaren have made some huge steps from the start of the year and going maybe even challenging to be an equal car with the Red Bulls at the moment. But poor old Fred, they didn't really grill him that much. They were actually very gentle with him on his post-race interview, and he is just having a bit of fun and laughing, and he put it down to at the end of Well, guess what? We're on our summer break. I can't wait now. I'm just going to go away on holidays and enjoy myself. He's
got one more race to go, which of
Yeah,
course is this
Spa.
weekend.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, at Spa, and of course, as we know, anything in terms of weather, anything can happen at Spa, and it's such a fast and challenging, and even dare I say, dangerous circuit at times. Like they've made some major changes to it to make it a lot safer, but I mean, it still is, because of those speeds and all the rest of it, is a very difficult track. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this week. It'll be interesting to see the team dynamics between Oscar and Lando and how they play things. But they obviously they'd obviously spoken about it beforehand, because in the radio messages and after as well, and Oscar brought it up as well, that apparently they had said in the driver briefing in the morning that basically this was what they were going to do. Whoever was in front was going to get the first option in terms of getting into the pits. But if for some reason they had to, pit the second car first because they were under challenge, then the deal was, that the person would, if it was safe,
they'll make a judgment call on who deserves the win. Yes.
Yeah, there. So it was good, and that's what they said, in the conversation with Lando in the cars. Like, we went through this morning, so they obviously spoke about it. It's not, and they knew this was going to happen. I think a few people have said now that what they need to do is the team need to be very, very tough in terms and very clear in their communications. And it was interesting. I really loved the stuff with Nico Rosberg. With his interview afterwards with Andrea Seidel, it was just
don't say at your earliest convenience.
yeah, that's it. It's like you've got to give, you need to give clear instructions to your drivers. It's like, you are pitting now, you are doing this, and your drivers have basically got to go along with it. Just as what do you think about if you could? We'd really appreciate it, mate.
I'm sure Lewis Hamilton's watching us right now, or will be tuning in later if he's preoccupied with some sort of part of his life that needs attention. But I'm actually going to throw out a massive compliment. I think Lewis was genuinely, didn't look it. I can tell he was genuinely wrapped and excited and very complimentary to Oscar for winning in even whatever circumstances was. On the podium, he was spraying champagne at Oscar, congratulating, well done. I actually thought, well done to Lewis.
Lando nearly took his head off with the champagne.
But
and
still,
he did the same thing again. He banged the champagne. Will he never learn?
Yeah. No, well, at least he didn't. At least he didn't break the trophy this year. I mean, that was.
But Lewis is actually. I think that was a great as a fellow driver. You can pretend to be excited, or you can just be, part of the participation, so to speak. But Lewis made up a little bit more effort than usual, I think. And congratulating. And it doesn't matter if I wouldn't care if it was Oscar or if it was, a Russian bloody driver or a Hulkenberg or whoever it may be. He was, that was well done, I think, and that's fantastic to see as well, though, too. Will Lewis regret leaving Mercedes? I don't think he will. I think he's won enough championships there. He's had his time. He's enjoyed his time. He has made some wonderful lifelong friends that he loves, and I think that
just fulfilling a dream.
He wants a different chapter, and I don't think he'll regret it, because whether he wins at Ferrari or he doesn't win at Ferrari, gets another championship or not, I think he
probably gets a Ferrari.
Yeah, he gets a Ferrari, and he just needs something else, something different in life. And as we all know, as we go through life these days, and it's coming out for football a lot at the moment, you can actually not have to win to be a winner. You don't have to win everything to be a winner in life. And I think Lewis will be, he will be, when he gets the chance to reflect on it properly and be able to express himself in the right environment, I don't think he will have any regrets, and he'll be quite fond and quite happy with his content with what he's done in life.
Well, it's also the thing. I mean, like Alan Jones always said that his great regret in Formula One was he had the opportunity to go to Ferrari and he didn't. And he said there is something very special about being a Ferrari driver. It's a part of Formula One history in and of itself to be able to not just say that I was a Formula One driver, but to be able to say I was a Ferrari Formula One driver.
Yep.
Still around the world means an awful lot in terms of the history of the sport. And I think Lewis is looking at that saying, well, I've done all I can here now. I mean, yes, it'd be great to win another championship with Mercedes, but at the same time, he wants in the last few years of his career, he probably wants a new challenge at a new place and say, okay, well, this will motivate me, and it's a new challenge, and in the highest profile drive in all of motorsport. So
look what's sitting on the bitumen behind me right now. There's a Ducati, and it's quite famously that Valentino Rossi at one stage in his career did switch from one of his Japanese manufacturers and jumped on a Ducati, which is one of the most famous motorcycles in the world. He rode it for a couple of years, didn't have the success that everyone, including him, would probably hope for, but it didn't tarnish his career, did it, either? So, it was just
and he'll always be a part of Mercedes history, as he is of McLaren. Yeah. Like he said he was delighted for McLaren because they were an important part of his family. They were the people who got him into Formula One. They supported him, basically from his earliest days in karting. Ron Dennis in particular, was right behind him to get him into Formula One. He saw him. I remember seeing an interview with Lewis when he was about 12. I think it was on Wide World of Sports, where he was, where Ron Dennis was saying, we need to get more young British drivers and young British people from different backgrounds into Formula. And this kid has something special. He's just dominating at his age level and above in karting. And one day, if all goes according to plan, and he puts in all of the work, one day, this kid's going to get into Formula One. And of course, he did it very quickly. He was very successful very quickly, and he's been incredibly successful ever since. So he's got nothing more to prove. He can go where he wants, and there's
a funny thing that happened on the weekend though too. I can't remember his name right now. He's Australian. He won a Formula One a race or two as well too. There's only 5 guys who've done it, but anyway, he's Oscar's manager, and he's pretty well known. Just his name escapes me right now, but. He didn't think he was going to win that on the weekend because he flew out before the race. He was there at the start of the weekend. But then obviously he didn't think it was the way the cards were going to fall, or it was in his horoscope for the weekend. And MW
I don't know what else he had on. I mean, he's very busy. He does have lots of commitments, a lot of business commitments, and all the rest of it. So I was surprised. I mean, obviously he'd be very excited, but he would have been. I imagine if he was sitting there, whatever he was watching from, he was probably had his head in his hands again and went, Smolty 221 all over again.
And he'd be going, how did I miss that? Anyway,
and yes, Paul, I noticed that. How quickly
they ride them from already this year.
Oscar, yes, yes, Paul. I noticed how quickly Oscar moved the trophy away from Lando.
Lando Oscar sort of posted on his social media as well. He basically put up his hand and said, after last year, I wasn't going to let anything happen to this. This is this is my first, and this is very precious. I mean, it's great because it's a very different sort of trophy. I mean, that's the one, and no matter how many trophies he gets, number one, it's going to be his first.
Yes.
But number two, it's going to be one of those sort of look at all you've got so many trophies. What on earth is that? I mean, it's going to be it just as a piece of art in itself is it's a great thing to have. We'll get on to Marc Marquez in a moment.
Like when you go up to Darwin, you get a didgeridoo, or you go to surfers, you get a surfboard, and
a surfboard, or all the rest of it. Yes. So but anyway, Roy saying I haven't seen anyone end up last and come back to second since he did it either. So it was always clear. I mean, you have a look at his record. I mean, it was clear how good he was, and Alpine must be just shaking their head at the moment and that's the problem that Red Bull have got now with Liam Lawson. I mean, they're in the Oscar Piastri position now with Lawson. If they don't find something for him, he's going to end up somewhere else. But they're still they just don't seem fully committed. No matter how well he did, they just don't seem fully committed to Lawson. And they're still saying that I think Perez will be with them for the whole year. I don't think there's a I don't think he's going to go anywhere, but it could make sense. Apparently, like Christian Horner has made no secret of the fact that he's still, regardless of his current form, he's still a Daniel Ricciardo fan, and he believes he could make a big contribution to that team with his knowledge and his background, his testing experience, all of those sorts of things. So he's still very keen. But if they've got to make a decision fairly soon, because otherwise Lawson's going to do a Piastri and he's going to end up, I don't know where. I haven't heard any sort of rumours. I don't know. Have you heard anything, Pete?
No.
The other thing as well, though, too, if Yuki doesn't watch out or he does pick up another deal somewhere else himself because he's dissatisfied, old Yuki's still got a lot of growing up to do. You think he's actually gone a couple of races and he's kept his head down, just raced and performed and done the right thing. And yeah, he's getting the results, but he just comes out with some stupid stuff sometimes, Yuki. For someone who's in their pardon?
He's fun to watch.
That's because he's an idiot. And anyway, and we all love watching idiots making a fool of themselves. But anyway, there you go. Thanks, Snackers. He went over to the E-Series race, apparently. That's what I said. He wouldn't be going to the E-Series if he was pretty much thought that Oscar was going to be getting a win. So,
it's probably part of his contract with Porsche, I would imagine.
Oh, you never know. Exactly. But the other thing as well, though, too, is you touched on it briefly, the Alpine situation and how bad, seriously, I don't think it'd be toxic. They'd just be so disappointed and so hands in their face type thing, and so knocked out at the moment. It's almost like a get out of jail free card for Esteban at the moment. That little controversy he had a few rounds ago early in the year, he's probably thinking, you know what? Even though no one got put in an extremely bad light, but it didn't look well for a few of the parties here, I'm actually glad to be out of the place and moving on to somewhere else, because it's going to be looking more promising somewhere else very quickly. So,
yeah, as Twisted Drifter saying, Daniel was impressive in the Red Bull test last year, and the word coming out that I haven't seen anything. I don't know if you've seen anything, Pete, but the word that was in one of the podcasts today that I heard is that the word out of Red Bull is that they were a little disappointed in Liam Lawson's pace in his latest test. They were hoping for a bit more, and they were hoping that. They said that he wasn't like miles off the pace, but they just felt that he would be, with everything to drive for, they just felt he would be a little bit quicker than he was, and that they're saying.
What's he been driving at the moment, though, Brett? I mean, that's
the problem. I mean, apart from he's not getting time behind the wheel. He's not racing in Japan anymore. He's just doing the sim work and his occasional sort of,
I'm sorry, but anyone in any sport, when you're not doing something on a semi-regular basis and you're professional at it, and it's like you've got to be doing it or playing for it. I'm sure, like even the Olympians, that's over where Brett is right now, over in Gay Paris, are probably they're training still regularly. They're going through different routines up until to their events and their sports, because you just don't go dead on throwing a javelin for 2 months before you go to the Olympics, do you?
It's interesting today that they apparently the FIA have come out or somebody's come out within Formula One. I'm not sure whether it was FIA or Formula One themselves, but the idea, the sort of supercar idea of having wild cards was apparently raised amongst the team. Some of them weren't keen on it, but that would be the sort of thing. Like if you could say that, okay, you're going to get sort of every team can run one wild card driver for a maximum of say 3 or 4 races.
Good, yeah.
That would. I mean, obviously, I imagine the reason they knocked it back is obviously because of the huge cost. But
it would be cap.
It'd be a great thing to be able to see sort of Antonelli driving in a Haas and
well, conceptually, Brett, isn't that what Ollie Behrman really did for that one race when Sainz was at the last minute could not do what he could
Well,
not.
he was their reserve driver, so
that's what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
wasn't that really, if you just take away all the politics and all the regulations and everything like that, it was basically a wild card driver for one race because it doesn't matter what the circumstances were, and he performed. You know what? It's probably had a huge part in obviously getting his full-time drive next year from whatever's going on. So if you, like you're saying, I reckon even 5 races a year, if you could put someone in a car and it was, say, like, for example, they do in motorsport as well, though, too, you have to be within 10% of the time, or the judges, or the race director will give you a discretionary pass to race in the main race for the day. And if that car obviously was somehow brought into their budget caps, each team could run, say, 3 to 5. Obviously, all the top teams would be running 5 races, and they could put someone in it. And I reckon that'd be a fantastic idea, but who knows?
It would brighten up the second half of the year if you could say, like, after the break, like, it's especially if Max had continued. If we've been very fortunate that McLaren have come on so strong, because now we really look at the break's going to come up, and it's like, okay, what's going to happen after the break? How close can McLaren get? How much faster are they? Can Red Bull answer this challenge? Will Mercedes keep improving? Can Ferrari come back, etc.? I mean, so there's plenty of storylines out there to talk about towards the end of the season. But if you also had the opportunity of, I wonder how Beerman will do, in that third Ferrari, and how will Antonelli feel, and Jack Doohan jumping behind the wheel of an Alpine.
They could be running last year's spec car, because they do it quite regularly. Look at MotoGP. Marquez was this year, his first year on a Ducati, and it's obviously not the factory team, but he's racing on he did testing on the last year's spec bike. There are other teams, satellite teams from time to time, that don't run the current year's spec bike. They'll give the satellite team, and especially Yamaha did it in years gone by as well too with their Tech 3 team. They would give them the last year's bike, and that would be a good proving ground to see who was a good rider and look at the times and the stuff where they are. So, and then don't forget, we've got the great big full reset.
Hang on. Just on Oliver Beerman was in the Haas on first practice in Austria, and he actually didn't do that well compared to what he did at Ferrari.
No, I didn't see anything, but I did notice that. Like when I didn't see any stories about it, but I did notice he was at the bottom of the field. Yeah. He hadn't done that well, and he's not exactly he's not dominating or setting the world on fire in Formula 2 either, in the same way that Oscar did in that time. I mean, Antonelli has sort of made a bit of a comeback now, but he wasn't setting the world on fire either for a while. But it's very, very close in Formula 2 right now. There's heaps of talent there, and that's the thing. Anyway.
Ollie just might have a taste of his of high-end merchandise.
Let's break away from Formula One now. We just talked about that because the supercars were in action on the weekend up at Sydney Motorsport Park under lights. They look fantastic under lights. The racing was all right. I mean, Pete, what did you think of it all?
The racing was all right. I liked the fueling races better than the straight out sprints. So I prefer that style of racing more than the sprint.
See, I'm the opposite. I think that's what really annoys me. I'm just old fashioned that I like to see, the lights go out, the drivers race, and they race to the checkered flag, and no one else gets involved. In a sprint situation, because the racing up until the first round of pit stops was pretty good, and then it's like, they're all. It's like it's a bit like watching NASCAR at the moment with the stage races. You can watch the start. And then it's like, well, there's really no point, as far as I'm concerned anyway. I've no reason to watch the whole race. I'll just come back and get either the last stage or the last 20 laps or so, because to me that's the important stuff. I don't need all that stuff, and I couldn't care less who wins stage one or who wins stage two. I see Peter Adderton's going, we should have stage racing like
no, we don't want.
We don't want that.
Tim Edwards has sort of mentioned that for Bathurst. And if they're looking at if they're looking at bringing in a younger audience, that'll just confuse them, because you'll have the championship winner and the stage winners, and it all becomes too confusing. Where a sprint race really worked with no pit stops was actually at the Grand Prix.
Yeah, well, that's why I thought the Grand Prix race was far and away the most entertaining supercar race we've had all year, because it was just that. It was, and if you make the races long enough, then you bring in the skill of the drivers by saying, okay, it's like, let's say it's a 40 lap race or whatever. It's a 40 lap race. You've got enough fuel for 41 laps. You've got enough tyre for 35 laps. And how you use it, I mean, you can either burn it really quickly at the start, or you can save it up and make a charge at the end, which is what Peter Brock used to do all the time. You'd see there he'd be behind us. What Van Gisbergen has done, in the past as well. I mean, it's
he rubbed his way through back anyway.
But that's half the fun. I mean, they could bump each other back in those days as well a little bit.
And
but
that was one thing I was impressed with. There was a bump. I can't remember who it was, but there was a bump in one of the races, and even it was David Reynolds was involved, and I can't remember the other guy. I'm not apportioning blame, but I'm just saying that there was a bump, and even David Reynolds went off, and there was no further action taken. And I thought that was really good. It was.
I haven't seen that yet.
I'd like that, because you have a look at some old races. If you go back to the days of course, like of Moffat and Jane and Beachy and all the rest of it, my God, the driving standards officials of today would have a nervous breakdown. I mean, they'd have to take them out in a straitjacket in a rubber room.
Are you borderline demolition of the Derby stuff, though? Because otherwise you just go out there and just punt everybody.
Bye, Mark. We'll just say goodbye to Mark. He's leaving us now.
You can't go out there and punt everyone. Like push them off the track every chance you get, though.
It works in NASCAR because they. Because if you bump someone, you can expect revenge when they catch up to you again. You can expect them to bump you as well.
There's a different set of circumstances and rules for that, though. So in NASCAR, if you bump and run, it's expected of you, and so like that. Whereas you jump in the series that we're talking about right now, the premise is if you do a decent bump, you expect to be disciplinary. So that's what the driver that's receiving it thinks should happen to the person that's hitting them, and then the driver that's doing it knows that they should expect the penalties. So, but if you wipe those rules and say right from the start that you can bump and run, well, then there's going to be you're going to expect it when you're out there racing. So I think when you've got rules that before you it's like going out in a football game and playing someone, or go out there in a game of soccer or something like that, saying, right, this is what the regulations and things are you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. It'd be like going head high tackle. You can go out there and you can just rip someone's head off. Well, then fair enough. You go out there and you'd expect it if you were playing it. But if you go out there and
that's what used to happen.
Well, that's right, but they've changed the rules. So if supercars let you bump, well then bump, take the rule out of it and don't give penalties anymore. So that's what I'm saying.
I think it depends on the nature of it. I mean, if it's very obvious, there's a difference between bumping someone aside or not or refusing to cede your line and holding onto your line and rubbing guards and all the rest of it and deliberately sort of you can tell when somebody's deliberately running someone, and if somebody deliberately runs someone off or cuts in on somebody and basically wipes their nose off or deliberately punts them off on the gives them a tap in the rear quarter and turns them around. By all means, give them a penalty. But if it's just sort of cars bashing into each other and occasionally one runs wide or someone comes back on and bumps someone off at the next corner or something, then just leave it. I think.
Okay, but if both cars proceed on, but what if one gets wiped out and ends up in the kiddie litter and gets beached and you can't race just for a bit of rubbing paint? That's not fair either.
That's racing.
That's racing.
Well, That's just going to escalate things between drivers when they go out there,
I
and they're just
know.
going to hit each other harder
Fantastic.
next time.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I don't
That's
think
it.
that's.
That's entertainment.
Well, I'd be going out there and I'd be just going, right, I don't care how many panels I do. I'm just going to punt everyone I can. That's just
Which was
bullshit.
pretty much the way it used to. Pretty much.
Well,
That
yeah,
was the other
I
thing.
know.
I mean, in the old days, the cars were not as susceptible. They certainly weren't going through the corners anywhere near as quick, and they were all
True.
in the main. They were all steel. I mean, there was a bit of a.
Yeah, now
But,
it's fiberglass. But anyhow. But yeah,
But
there's got to be a differentiation. You've got to be able to have the rules to be able to do it. Otherwise, you just turn it into a demolition derby. Everyone just goes belting everyone all the time. So
And if you
got to
ram someone into a fence, then yes, you get a penalty.
No, you just said you could just shunt them and not worry about it. You keep
No, I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that.
If you're deliberately run someone off the track, and you can see when somebody's deliberately. I'm going to knock you off.
Get away with a bit. They can be very, very discreet how they just tap. Like if you're a little front tap, a little back.
A good driving standards officer is going to have the experience to be able to sit there and go, "No, mate, I know what you were doing because."
True.
I did that myself, I just think
you reckon Beardy's going to say, "Oh, that's all right. I've tried that one."
Occasionally, he has actually occasionally.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I know Beardy has. I know.
Yeah, he has. But anyway, I thought it was. I thought the meeting it looked fabulous. I mean, the problem was once again. And of course, because of the weather that we've had, right up and down the eastern seaboard of Australia, it was freezing cold out there. Everyone was miserable. The crowd wasn't as big as they were hoping, and that wouldn't have helped. You imagine it's like the days of the Thunderdome. I mean, you'd go out there, it was. The nights that would get into sort of, you'd have a really hot day, and then by the time the racing started, it might have just. Well, no, it might have just ducked into the low to mid 20. Occasionally, you got a really cold night. A couple of nights of the drags were absolutely even in the middle of summer. There was a nationals there one year where I think it got to about 40 degrees or just over 40 degrees in the day, and by about getting on to midnight, I was absolutely frozen, and I don't feel the cold, but boy, I felt it. So it must have been under sort of 2 or 3 degrees. It was, it was terrible. But yeah, I think that a bit of banging was, but it looked really, really good. It was great to see the touring car masters races were very entertaining. I didn't
just
see
before
much
we jump
of
onto that stuff. What happened with the Grove spinning wheels thing? I heard something about. I didn't hear.
No action.
What happened though?
I think they in the pit. Their clutch was faulty, they were spinning the wheel.
Yep, cool. That's right. I just didn't know how it occurred. Thank you.
Yeah, which surprised me. There was no action, or whether they had a faulty clutch or not. The reason that they're very firm on that is because it is a danger to the people who are putting on. It can be a danger to the people who are putting on the wheels, and it was clearly spinning. I mean, you can see when it was amazing. They got the tire back on so well, but
and therefore, if it's faulty, it's racing in an unsafe condition. So they could have got him for that, I reckon.
Yeah, I think it was surprising that they didn't. I mean, I'm glad that they weren't penalised and all that. The sports sedans ran there on the weekend, national sports sedans. They'll be in action at Sandown coming up in the next few weeks as part of the state series. You sort of mentioned that before. They're racing there, and the Daniel Tomasi in the Calibra won the first 2 races, and then had some. Wasn't quite as quick in the final race. So Peter Inger in that gorgeous looking Mazda RX-7, the turbo rotary, that ended up taking the win in the Deswall Trophy, which is a very, very big deal amongst the sports sedan guys, particularly up in New South Wales, because Des was an absolute sort of legend of the sport up there. He's very popular guy, and that means a lot to any of the sports sedan drivers, but particularly anybody from New South Wales. And as I said, they'll be in action at Sandown, and really hoping to get out there and be able to wave the camera around in front of a couple of them. Would really like to do a story on on that RX-7 and also the Terry Shield car if that comes down as well.
You just remind me of a pop quiz I've been meaning to ask for a while. RX-7 remind me of the RX-8 Cup. How many years away do you reckon we're going to be before we have a Kia Stinger Cup?
Well, let's hope it's a long time. I don't know. I don't think there's enough of them. I don't think there's anywhere near enough of them.
Well, Kia Stingers on the road. There's plenty out there around in different places. But it was like the RX-8s back in the day. There was
the RX.
It
depends on. See, the RX-8s were like the Porsche 944s here in Victoria. A lot of them have come over as grey imports from Japan and New Zealand and other places. Where they're basically written off like really early and they just bring them over at a ridiculously cheap price on the basis that they can never be road registered. And so that's why the RX-8 Cup, those cars were so affordable. Speaking of the RX-8, there was Peter Ingram's brother was also running an ex-IMSA RX-8 in sports sedans as well. So a few interesting sports sedans getting around. And that's cool. Mark saying a 20B RX-8 series. Yeah, that'd be fun. That would sound good, look good, especially at night with all those flames and all the rest and all the popping.
Don't want to talk about bikes too much tonight as well, though, too. But Brett, you did mention at the start. No. We're not doing it. No, there's nothing.
No, we probably don't have time, Pete.
No, exactly. We don't have time. But Brett,
unless you want to burst into song. I mean,
no, you've already mentioned about the bikes right back at the start of the show. If you want to rewind and hit the squealy button, you said something about the British Grand Prix back at the start, and you corrected yourself. No, it wasn't British. Yes, it was. The British Grand Prix for bikes is coming up in a couple of weeks. There's nothing really to talk about on bikes anyway. So
I'll just get a quick comment because we've got it in the ticker as well. Is that Fabio Quartararo is saying that Marc Marquez is a better rider, and in terms of overall career, that Marc Marquez is better than Valentino Rossi. In 25 words or less, why is he wrong?
Because he wants a Ducati ride next year.
Well, I think he's got one of those already, but I don't know whether insulting.
I can do it less. I did less than 10 if you want. I summed it up, but I'll make it. I'll make it 2 lots of 10. 1, he wants a Ducati bike next year instead of the Yamaha he's riding, and 2, I'll do it in less than 10. He likes him and is more friends with Marc Marquez than he was with Valentino. That's like that's 2 scenarios.
Also, Ben, I'm just looking for your original post because I was going to put that up towards the end of the day. Yeah, coming up later on in the year is in Western Australia is the High Limits of the Sprint Car Series. You know of World of Outlaws. They're the most famous sprint car series in the world in the United States. This is sort of an alternative that I think it's Kyle Larson and a few others are involved with. They're going to have a round of their championship in Perth at the Motorplex later on in the year, and it will be absolutely massive. Huge prize money, a huge budget. We'll have all of the top Australian drivers and cars there, and a lot of the top American drivers, of course. It'll be really sort of a one-off world championship in a way. I mean, I know you've got Knoxville over in America and all the rest of it, but you'll have so many sort of Australians, and I imagine a few Kiwis will probably come over as well because of the attraction of all that money. So that's going to be interesting, that series. It's sort of an alternative to the World of Outlaws, and they've got obviously got a lot of money behind them, and that's going to come later on in the year. And of course, apart from that, sprint cars, they'll be on a huge roll because they'll be coming out of their big race in Adelaide as well, as part of the Adelaide 500, where they've got that temporary track being built right now, that'll be amazing to sort of to look at as well. So sprint car racing, it sort of bubbles under the radar. It is very hard. I must say, it's a very hard sport to cover in terms of getting
Brett,
information.
I have some feelers out there. So as you quite know, it doesn't.
Well,
know
we've all had feelers out for it, and it's getting. So I
Yeah.
will say one thing, a very quick comment, and because it's usually happening on the same night as the same time we're on. Speedway Australia has been doing a lot of really good stuff online just recently over the sort of this off season. I mean, they're still racing in the northern states, but during the off season, doing a lot of sort of seminars and workshops and discussions with the Speedway community, where they're trying to get the Speedway guys to promote themselves more. They're getting out there and saying, for God's sake, we shouldn't be keeping this sport a secret, and we shouldn't be so insular about it. And we should be welcoming everybody into the sport and getting as many newcomers into the sport as possible. And we need to be getting information out there, and we need to be talking to people. As we've said, I mean, we've had lots of sprint car drivers on the show and in pit lane over the years. But it has been a real problem getting some of them, because a lot of them are based in country areas, admittedly. But
yes,
it has been a problem of trying to, when we've contacted them and said, hey, would you like to come on and talk about, the sprint car, Easter Sprint Car Trail or something like that? More often than not, we get, what night is it? Nah, couldn't be bothered. And the people who do come on, I mean, that we've had just recently have been fantastic. But some people, they're very
contact. Brett, every week I go to Geelong at the moment, and I've kept this myself right up until now. I haven't even mentioned this to Brett myself, but I go out for work to Geelong about once a week at the moment, sometimes twice, and there's a guy out there I go and do deliveries to, and he races Speedway very regularly, and I have conversations with him about it, but not in depth. So what I will do is, when I go and see my friend Mick out in Geelong, who was racing at Warrnambool on the weekend, I think, and he raced a couple of weeks ago at such and such, and he races quite regularly. And I haven't mentioned this to Brett before, so when I go and see my client in Geelong on a regular basis, I'm going to start getting some grassroots stuff.
And once again, to any Speedway out there, I've said this a million times, Speedway is a fantastic television sport. It's, in terms of motor racing, it is the easiest and cheapest form of motorsport to do. To give you an idea, like a race meeting, a round of the state series or something like that, you're looking at a budget of around $23,000 to $28,000 to pull that all together. If you do it on the cheap, you might get down to just under $20,000. Speedway, we can actually do live streaming of Speedway for probably a couple of thousand, 2.5. 3 at the most, sort of thing. So if there's any Speedway clubs in Victoria that would like to talk to us about having your meetings not just live streamed on the internet as well, but also on Channel 31 coming up over the summer. I know Channel 31 would love us to have a Speedway season, and we did for a long time ago. We had Speedway, we had drag race, we had a whole bunch of things in the summer, and it was very, very popular. So get in touch with us. We'd certainly love to cover it. Cover it. Mark saying bring back tarmac quarters. Yeah, I saw some old footage. If you go onto YouTube and looks for old stuff out of Liverpool when they had the tarmac track at Liverpool, that was some pretty amazing stuff too. Ben, yes, I will try and send us through your email contacts, Ben, and if we'd like to. We'd certainly like to cover more Speedway and drag racing and a whole bunch of other things.
And if I'm back on next week, I'll contact Mick and I'll ask him how the Warrnambool meet on the weekend went as a whole for you all.
And I'm also hoping that next week we might have someone coming on from the Historic Sports Sedans to talk about the Winton Festival of Speed. Mark Scully's been in touch. Mark Scully's been in touch to talk about the Historic Sports Sedans. They're running up at Winton Festival of Speed. They've got a really good entry of some very famous sports sedans and some great replicas of sports sedans. So they're going up. Marseille Latrobe, that was the track down in Speedway, down in Tasmania. That was a great track as well. You got just in time for us to say goodbye, Dogfish. 4 Kiwis in IndyCar. Well, one of them got run off the track and put into the wall by the Aussie. And Will Power has now come out and said, mea culpa, mate. It was my fault. I'm sorry. Scotty wasn't happy, and quite rightly.
But at least they're
that.
mates, so he'll understand.
But yeah, as you said, 4, you've got Scott McLaughlin. The answer is always Scott Dixon. You've got Marcus Armstrong, and then also last weekend you had young McElrea as well, and he's looking to do more rounds as well. Also, as we've got in the details in US F2000. Currently leading the series and winning on the weekend is young Queensland driver Lockie Dalton. And if he wins that, he will get the Road to Indy package, which will move him up to Indy Next, which is the next step before getting into IndyCar. So we could have some, certainly plenty of Kiwis, but we might even get a young Aussie in there at some stage as well. So there you go. So that's coming up. Anything before we go? I think that sort of covers everything at our end, and we'll get back to you next week with we'll see how do anybody care about the Olympics? Anybody on Doc?
Yes, we do. Yeah. Well, look, it takes a while to warm up to it in a few days' time.
Especially since the first week is swimming is the most painfully unsuitable sport for television ever created. It is painfully dull.
Can't wait for all the social media posts on how bad or how good the opening ceremony is, because that's more entertaining than actually watching the ceremony.
That will, but I must say, I remember the opening ceremony for the Winter Olympics. In France, when France had the Winter Olympics, was the most amazing bit of theatre that I've ever seen. I imagine that the opening ceremony for this Olympics, and they're going to do it very differently. They're not doing it in the Stade de France. They're going to actually do it around the city, and instead of having an athletes parade, they're going to all come down. It's a bit like they've taken influence from Moomba, the changes in Moomba. They're going to come down on barges on the River Seine. So yes, that's all.
It's funny you're saying, oh, no one cares about the Olympics. Oh, sorry, a minute ago, something about the Olympics, then saying, oh, but you seem to know a lot about the opening ceremony.
I know the opening ceremony because it's theatre and it's television.
Yeah, I know.
It's got nothing to do with the boring sport.
Some of them.
Break dancing is on the Olympics. Does that not tell you how much of a joke it is? It's
not going to be everyone's cup of tea. It's not going to. We're not watching winter with its curling or anything like that. Just everyone has their different interests in life. Let them have a crack. No. And they've got plenty of channels that they don't have to watch on mainstream, because all the 9 channels will be all on their online versions.
Now, I just want to put this up because Paul's put it up a couple of times. I had to put it aside because I didn't want to because it's stuff we spoke about when he passed regarding Peter Husband. You might remember a couple of weeks ago we did announce that Peter had passed away. Now, so there won't be a public funeral for whatever reason. I don't know whether that's what the situation. Peter, it might have been Peter's wish. That was Melissa's wish. Everyone keeps saying, "Oh, we didn't hear about Melissa's funeral." No, I don't want a funeral. Not interested in a funeral. Couldn't. Me, I want a funeral. Trust me, it'll be hilarious. You've got book your tickets now. I think it's next Thursday at about 7:00.
As long as it's not before the opening ceremony.
Yes. As long as no, I'm not. It's time. Most important thing in show business is timing. But
count us down,
there is a plan for a memorial service of some sort at Sandown. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but there is stuff being spoken about Peter, because a lot of officials, a lot of people in the sport want to pass on their condolences and be able to sort of celebrate the life of Peter. Great, long-standing official, photographer. Hopefully we believe that there is some work being done behind the scenes now. Mark Bateman, the chaplain, is apparently doing some work behind the scenes to try and make something happen.
Great bloke, Mark.
Yeah, great bloke. So just keep an eye on it. We will certainly, when we get information about it, when it's going to be, where it's going to be, at Sandown, and that seems to be the most logical place to have it. So if they can organise that, and whatever day that is, we'll certainly let you know about it beforehand. So yeah, okay.
All right.
So yeah, and as is pointed out by Dogfish, Australian, the opening ceremony and also the closing ceremony was invented by Australia. The first ever closing ceremony with all of the
it says Austrian.
Austrian. Oh yes, yeah, no, yeah, okay, yes, I know who that. Yeah, now I understand.
Austrian painter.
Now I know who set it up. Yes.
Austrian. Okay.
Yes, a great influence on a certain American politician at the moment.
Oh, yeah, all right.
Anyway, we'll see you next week, and happy Olympics. Bonsoir.
We'll be in the thick of it next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
You're going to
this week.
Full course yellow in the middle of the badminton next week, Brett.
I imagine so. We might do it as a. Well, it depends. I mean, if the beach volleyball's on, there's no guarantee that I'm going to be in a fit state to be. To be anywhere. So
imagine Brett. He's just buried. And there's only his head above the sand. Yep. Good night, everyone.
See you later, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye.